Yeah, well, the countdown's cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. We're here, and we're talking about some human factor stuff today. Yeah. Trying to pull up my monitor here so I can see if there's any technical issues. There we go. All right, let's bring that up. How's everybody doing tonight? How are you, Blake?
I am loving life. Long but rewarding day. That's for sure. How about you, man? You doing all right?
Good. I'm glad. I've also had a couple really long but rewarding days. I mean, this is my one more thing this week, but man, moving is a chore.
Yikes. Yeah, that's coming up fast, isn't it?
Dude, I can't believe it. We got the countdown here. It's like 11 days before we start getting out of here. I know.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to get
a
little bit behind the scenes. I'm trying to get ahead of all of our like social posts to remind everybody that, hey, we're not on this week, but you can check out here for all that stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot to like look at the calendar ahead and be like, oh yeah, something's got to go out this day, and then something's got to go out that day, so that we won't lose our social presence and all that stuff. It's weird. It's very weird.
Strange and interesting time.
Yeah. So if you're with us, thank you. We are doing some stuff where tonight it's a big article. This is actually a really one of the larger articles that we've had in quite a bit, and I think it's because it's the whole study here that we're talking about. So I mean, this is not the main show yet. That's in 30 minutes from now, but this is the show prep. But you'll get a little bit more insight, I think, this week than normal weeks, because we do want to go over some of this stuff in this document. Like, this is a big document here. And just in terms of show notes, I think some of the interesting things for us to talk about are some of these key findings. So maybe that's worth pulling in. I think some of these graphs are really helpful. We got to describe them, though. I think the pros and cons, or benefits and costs to faster travel, is a good one to bring up. This is an interesting figure that results in those benefits and cost.
Very sick. Yeah, this is like a really in-depth kind of analysis, it looks like.
Yeah, I thought this figure was really neat too. Sort of the, when something was invented, walking, ancient times, right? And then you have kind of the speed at which the increase, you can see kind of this logarithmic increase. And now this is something, I don't know if you want to talk about this on the show, Blake, but there was a couple years ago some proposal for like a rocket system where you, from anywhere on Earth, you can take off, drift up 15 minutes or drift or what am I trying to say? Fly up 7 minutes and then drift down 7 minutes more and land at any destination on Earth. The most it would take you is 15 minutes. And then there's like the tunneling through the Earth. Any 2 points are connected by 15-minute tunnel, because if you go at terminal velocity through the center of the Earth, straight to the other side, then you can get around some of those things. I don't know if we want to bring those up. This is more surface transportation, although a little bit of
we'll be doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I brought them up because of this graph, right? I mean, if you think about miles per hour, those would be pretty high on that list. I think time to destination, might be a better list. If you are joining us tonight and want to say hi or have any thoughts about the article as we go through it, or anything like that, drop a hello in the chat. We'll see it here. Let's see. Demand for speed. Comparing transportation improvement options. think some of the other stuff I wanted to bring in are illustrated down here. Speed, benefits, and costs. Like I said, that chart is pretty good. We can talk about it on the show. Travel time savings. Geez, there were some concepts in here that I really wanted to pull on, but comfort and stress is good. Vehicle expenses, I don't really care. I'm going to grab this right now while I'm thinking about it. I already pulled our It Came Froms this week because
sick. Cool. We got any good ones?
I mean they're the same ones that we keep bringing up week over week, but hang on, let me
there we go. Not driverless.
Throw that in there. Yeah, so the ones this week, we got thoughts on working at a design agency or human factors agency versus a product-based in-house company. So this is like IDEO versus like Netflix.
Yep.
I have experience working at both. Do you have a similar skill set there, Blake?
A contracting thing, so it's similar to what you might experience in an agency, but I've worked a little bit doing that on singular product as well.
Cool. Yeah. So I think it'll be. I think we'll have enough to talk there. And then the other one here. What do you do when you're stuck on a problem?
You cry. No, you do.
The answer.
Not what Blake does. I have a good answer for that one. That's funny. That's really topical for this week too. So that's even better. What do you do when you have a problem? Well, not this.
Yeah, we could pull in another one if we really wanted to. Like changing your job title. And in fact, this is like to something that more accurately reflect your work. This is behind the scenes. Blake, is there any way that we can get some content out on YouTube at least during the weeks that we're off? Is that something?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be off from Friday to Monday, so I should be able to crank out some content for it.
Yeah, that'd be good. I've been doing on YouTube. There's these shorts, right? They're kind of like their answer to TikTok or whatever. And I did one this week just as an experimental thing where it's kind of like just going over the news that wasn't, that we did in the weekly roundup. And it's not very high production quality. I'm warning you now if you go watch it. But I think the concept is kind of cool. So here, let me we can show this because it's ours, right? Like there's no rules against that, right?
Strike against it, so you should be fine.
You know what? It's our content, and I'm giving us permission to use our content. So
sweet, there we go.
Yeah, I don't think it'll. I don't.
Bit of inception in some ways, but yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is what we're doing here. It's literally called these YouTube Shorts, and it's I'll kill the volume. You don't need to hear it. It's just me reading not reading the headlines, but explaining the headlines. So it's like, hey, look, you even got the movie one over the top of it, like really low production quality. But it's just kind of a slideshow of some of these news stories. It's very quick. It's like a 32-second video just of what you might have missed. And hey, by the way, if you're paying attention to this stuff, you can go check out our blog for the links to the full article. I think I put them in here as well. Oh wait, no, I can't because it's a short. But anyway, yeah, go check that out.
Sweet.
So it's experimental. So take that as you will.
That's pretty awesome, though, man.
So anyway, we'll see. I'm gonna try to do it every week, but we'll see if that happens. What was I talking about here? Wow, we got quite a few people on tonight. Thank you for joining us. We see you. Say hi if you're in the chat, and we should be able to see that. Okay. All right. There was something else in this article. Getting back to this article thing here. there's something else in here that I wanted to grab and talk about. I think it was oh dude, this is such a this is such a great graph for anyone who's watching right now. And I'll describe it for our patrons because they get the audio version of this. So there's a road space requirements by vehicle speeds, and the faster you go, the more road space you need between cars, which is something that is like a total no-brainer, but at the same time I had never thought about in this regard. It's really cool to see it like laid out like this. You can see the image on page 13 of the full document. I want to talk about that because that's another kind of key point here with this slowness versus fastness piece. And then there's the whole like road and parking spaces required by travel modes. It seems like, and this is just my what is it? Not my expert opinion here, Blake, but it seems like slower transportation may be the way to go.
Oh no. I want to go fast, man. Come on.
You want to, but look, all the benefits are laid out right here of slower transportation. The savings that you get are marginal.
By going quick?
By going quickly, yeah, it's marginal savings.
I mean, that's good because I don't walk very fast, so it's all good. That makes sense.
There's another one that
pretty interesting.
Social.
There's
equity.
A lot of content from this meta-analysis here.
Dude, this is a yeah.
Whoa! What are you? All right, community livability and cohesion.
There's yeah, I want to talk about these points. These were the points that I wanted to bring in. So yeah, it's weird because we prioritize speed over other goals, and we could talk about this on the show, but like it's just weird that, you know, like you just said it, I want to go fast. I think a lot of us do, but we don't realize, you know, some of the other goals that need to be considered here, like the social equity impacts, the accessibility trade-offs, the true travel time savings. It's like, it's some interesting stuff here that's like, you know, I certainly overlooked it. And when I was going through this article during office hours, it was like, this is a really cool article. I'm really glad our patrons chose this too, because I personally would have gone with something else, but this is certainly...
yeah, I may have overlooked it if it hadn't been picked for us, to be honest.
Yeah,
this is cool.
I mean, like I said, I saw it in the news, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is great." Patrons never choose transportation articles, but this one was really good.
Yes,
like we have the TRB, the Transportation Research Board, as one of our sources for news, and like there's something cool every week, and it just feels like it feels like the ratio between TRB articles and every other sector of human factors is a little skewed. So it feels like there's always an overabundance of them, but we never talk about any of them. It's weird.
Which is kind of funny, right? Because like transportation is one of those things that human factors from a planning perspective is super important.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff I feel like I see are these really big meta-analyses from, you know, impact studies and all this other stuff for planning. And so maybe it's not always 100% easy to really just pull out the applicable stuff either. I mean, and they don't like have, you know, sexy titles either. This one's kind of cool because it's all about like the trade-off in speed in a lot of ways and the impact of that.
Let's see here.
But yeah, it's awesome that it seems like a lot of work goes into this sector and a lot of like systems thinking is happening, because there's plenty of industries out there where that's not the case, where it needs to be more like this, where they're actually doing a lot of research, heavy work to make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to call it a bias, but my
Oh, that's a vibe. What is this?
my sort of knowledge of the transportation sector is limited to like these micro changes that you might find in transportation, right? So like, how can we optimize the distance between lane markings to alter humans' speed when they're at the wheel for safety purposes? How can we change road signage, the font, the text, the messaging used to appropriately, those types of micro changes. And this is much more macro in scale. It's talking about, planning from point A to point B, and there's everything in between. And this seems more like an infrastructure type of thing, right? Where,
this is way up there in the macro level.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Excited.
It's definitely not something that comes to my mind either, because when I think of driving, I spent an entire semester basically reading driving studies, but they were all focused on attentional deficits in driving, and then integration of various technology into automobiles, phone accidents, all sorts of stuff. And so I often forget, like, there's a rationale for the reason that roads and highways and stuff are designed the way they are, and there's a reason for the symbology that's used, and there is like an underlying infrastructure there. So it's cool to see kind of the underlying benefits of what exists or what could be then the next gen type of stuff.
Yeah. How are we on the blurb? I know that's probably a big thing this week.
I'm good.
Oh, we're good? Okay, cool. Yeah, there's great. You got all the key findings there. That'll be a fun list to go through. So I figure when we do the show, we do the blurb. Maybe we bounce back and forth as like a team. Like, you pass back to me, I read like 5 key findings, I'll pass it back to you, you read 5 till we get through this list. Like, maybe we could talk about them as we find anything interesting there, right? I think that's a good way to start. That list got jacked up in our show notes. I don't know what happened.
Let's take a peek.
Might just want to snap a picture, because I think that's probably easier for this article since it's a PDF.
Oh God, yeah.
But yeah, we can go back and forth, read those, find anything interesting, and then we can get into some of this, like travel time savings, the interesting bits about infrastructure costs and all that stuff. You can kind of tackle it from that perspective, and then we have some more like higher level conceptual. What do we do for public transit? Bits,
what do we
right?
do? I'm telling you, we should have brought on our lovely listener who loves this stuff and actually has really good insights to it, because he's worked in rail stuff and transportation before, I do believe.
Yeah. He's part of the lab now.
Oh, that's right. I saw that in the thing, the Discord. Goodness, today's been a day. But yeah, so that's pretty sweet. Because he's always got some fun insights into things and brings a different attitude being from a different country. So just a different perspective overall.
I agree. I'm gonna clean up this intel section here because there's a lot. Yeah. Well, this is kind of a science fiction question, but what would happen if we had instant transportation, like teleportation or whatever? You ever play those like mind games? Like, what would happen if, using the portal gun from Portal, if you opened up a portal in your home and then opened one up in the Arctic? What would happen? Would your house or apartment get cool as the air travels through the portal?
I would think so. That would be my guess. Because it's not like you're creating a hole through the earth. You're creating a temporal change. And time can flow
a hole
both
in
ways.
space and time. Speaking of space and time, you've been watching Loki?
I haven't because Lisa's out of town. So
Oh,
I have
no.
to wait. Yeah.
Oh no.
Which means I can't open Google either. Because I don't know if you have this, but on my Chrome browser on my phone, it always has spoilers for the shows that I watch. It did it with The Mandalorian. It did it with The Bad Batch. It's probably going to do it with Loki before next week comes.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a pain in my ass. I don't like it.
Yeah, I feel you. I really this is I really hate the Wednesday drops, man. Those are killing me. So I stay up late on Tuesday nights to catch it at midnight Pacific.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then I turn around and wake up at 6 for work.
You're insane.
I am. I don't want to get spoiled. I'd rather lose sleep
man.
than get spoiled. And I feel like I'm gonna have to do the same with Black Widow tonight. I thought about going to the movie theater tonight for the first time in a long time. Right. My wife went to the movie theater a couple weeks ago to see a movie for the first time with a friend, and so it's my turn now. And I think I'm gonna use it on Black Widow, but I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna go tonight. I got too much stuff to do in post, but it would have been fun to go to opening night again.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I haven't thought about doing that in so long.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to go with me? Midnight showing?
Yeah, right. There's no way. Absolutely.
You got a doggo to take care of.
Yeah, well, and I got to get up for a meeting at 7 in the morning. I'm just not having it. Midnight. I don't even know if I'd make it to midnight. I feel like an old person.
I mean, they have the 9 o'clock showings, right? Here on the West Coast, at least. So
that's true.
If it wasn't so close to the end of the pod, I think it would be something I'd be interested in doing. But maybe I'll go catch it this weekend or something.
I'm really excited to see it nonetheless. Because I loved the Black Widow character, and I'm glad they did a one-off.
Me too. I gotta stay away from spoilers until I see it.
Yeah.
So I'm do I watch it on the small screen so I at least get the story and I'm not spoiled, and then do I go to the movie theater afterwards? Because it's I only missed one Marvel movie in theaters.
Which one? And
it ended up being one of my favorites, and I'm really still salty about it. It was I don't know. There's 22 Marvel movies or something like that. You want to take a guess?
21.
Is it 21? 22 tomorrow. So my favorite one, or I guess it was the one that I didn't see in theaters, but it was Doctor Strange.
Oh man, yeah, that one was one that I slept on in the theaters and didn't see it, and it is probably my favorite one.
Yep.
Out of all of them. I will not make the same mistake for Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah, same.
But, geez. Yeah, that was just a awesome character. Great storyline, all that kind of good stuff.
All right. I think are we good for tonight's show? I want to make sure before we get going here.
Yeah, I think so. We got key findings. I got a little blurb based off of the executive summary. We got some... Oh, do we need to clean up this banter between y'all?
I can read through it. Let's see here. I'll highlight the important bits.
Cool.
So that way you can track in the notes. I think everything else is kind of anecdotal and
splendiferous. Cool.
Yeah. Well, we sure do appreciate all of you hanging out with us in the pre-show. If you're with us, give us a like and a follow and a share and do all that stuff. That really helps other people find the show, no matter where you're watching. Could be we're on Twitch, on LinkedIn. No, we're not on LinkedIn yet. Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, all that stuff. Whatever you're on, if you hit that like button, share it with a friend, a colleague, that would really mean a lot to us. We always like hearing what's going on in the Human Factors community space. And hopefully other people enjoy that passion that we share. That was a bad plug. Anyway, whatever. I don't. I'm bad at plugging our own stuff. Look, I'm bad at asking for the likes and the follows and the subscribes. So just do it. It really helps us. I don't want to beg.
It does. I mean, it helps like channels grow and all that kind of good stuff, and it'll be more likely that other people can find the content and all that kind of good stuff. Definitely check out the website though, because the deep dives that y'all have done are awesome.
Yeah,
lots of really good details. Yeah, 100%. Very, very cool.
Those have been fun to read as those have come in. Like, a lot of the times I don't make very many edits to them, because she does such a awesome job, and it's like the edits that I do make are pretty minor. It's like, hey, we had a show on this that you might not know about. You want to throw that in there? So I mean, it's awesome. Yeah, those are really cool companion pieces to the podcast. And even though we're not here next week, oh yeah, spoilers, we're not here for the next 2 weeks because we're taking a little summer hiatus. We'll mention that in the programming notes for the show. But even though we're not here next week, the deep dive will drop next week. There will be a news roundup for the next 2 weeks, although there won't be office hours for those. So it'll still be there. News nonetheless. I'll still try to do the little cheapo short on YouTube, see if those work. You holding office hours anytime soon?
I am not, because I'm got an odd schedule for work at the moment.
No sweat.
So
yeah,
spending time there.
I hear you, man. Yeah, this next couple weeks are going to be real weird.
Yep, probably till August things are going to be a little insane.
Yeah,
which is probably good that I'm taking the time off of the pod for the next 2 weeks. It'll give me a little bit of a break.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we do these summer I feel like we do 2 hiatuses a year. We do like one in the summer and one in the winter, and it's usually like
bears.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's usually like then there's maybe like the occasional pod that we miss throughout the year. I feel like we're pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, you are very consistent. I know that I definitely miss more pods than you do.
I feel like I feel like it's an obligation. It's an obligation to the community. All right. Well, we're just about time here.
Breaks indeed.
What's that?
Kristen's comment from Twitch. I miss my college breaks. That's why I end up taking them like this from the podcast.
I hear you. Yeah, that is true. Exactly that, Blake. The summer break. How I long for those days. All right. I think we're going to play some things and play a thing, and then we come back. We're going to do the actual show, which is scary because I feel like I'm not.
Do you have Audacity up?
No, I don't. Of course not. Oh, hey, by the way, don't update that yet. If you get a prompt to update Audacity, don't do it because of all the spyware stuff. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
I was going to text you earlier this week, but I figured you wouldn't open Audacity anyway.
No.
Yeah. So don't update it if it prompts you. Yeah. All right. We're going to play a thing, and the intro thing is what it's called. I think maybe, I don't know, intro video, something like that. We're going to play that, and we're going to do a podcast, and it'll be great. So stick around 1 minute. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hi, hello, everybody. It's episode 212. We're recording this live on July 8th, 2021, and this is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome, joined by Mr. Blake Arnsdorff, as always.
212. Wow. It's come a long way. How you doing today, Nick?
I'm good. It's a nice palindromic quality to the episode number tonight. I'm good. Hey, I do have to talk really quickly before we get into the show proper tonight. Little programming note or community update, if you will. We are going to be taking a break off for the next couple weeks. Blake and I have got some stuff going on IRL. We're going to try to get as much stuff out there for you on our channels and all that stuff in the meantime, but no show proper for the next couple weeks. We're still going to continue our news roundups on our blog. There'll be some content coming out on our YouTube as well. And our patrons will continue to get their Human Factors minutes. So if you're really itching for some Human Factors content, maybe subscribe for a month, see if you like it. And the main show will be back on the 29th for everyone. So wanted to get that out of the way at the top in case you're listening. Anyway, anything else to add to that, Blake?
No, that was a great breakdown. And I look forward to taking a little break and then coming back and getting ready right back into it.
It'll be a nice little break. And when we come back, my background will be a little different. So
That's
anyway.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we know why you're all here. You're here for Human Factors News. Yes, Human Factors News. This is a part of the show where we search all over everything related to the field of human factors. Everything. I do the news stories on Tuesdays, and the patrons choose it, and it ends up being a thing from any one of the industries associated with human factors. It's all fair game as long as it relates to the field of human factors. Blake, what do we have up this week?
So this week we're talking about better speed valuation for transportation planning. So transportation planning decisions, believe it or not, often involve trade-offs between travel speed and other goals. And it's important to consider all the impacts when making speed-related decisions, which the Victoria Transport Policy Institute has come out with a report that examines why and how to do that. The report describes various benefits and costs of faster travel, examining how speed valuations affect planning decisions, and also how those planning decisions will ultimately affect the economy, social impacts, as well as environmental outcomes. The report also provides guidance for comprehensive evaluation of these various impacts, analysis indicating conventional planning tends to exaggerate the benefit and understate the costs of higher travel speeds. This often favors modes such as automobiles over slower, more affordable and healthy, equipable, and resource-efficient modes such as walking, bicycling to work, or public transit, favoring kind of these higher roadway design speeds over these slower modes of transportation. So consumer surveys have also indicated from this institute's report that many people actually want to drive less and rely on these slower modes of transportation and live in more compact and walkable communities. Serving these demands requires much more comprehensive analysis, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the benefits and trade-offs for this speed-related transition. So, Nick, I joked a little, but there's a good bit of seriousness in it before this, that I do like to drive fast, whether it's, on a bike, in a car, or running. But there's something I've never really thought about when it comes to transportation or even transportation infrastructure planning, and that's the impact of doing things quickly or driving fast. Have you really ever thought about the human factors implications of this kind of stuff for transportation?
No, in the pre-show, we talked a little bit about it, but my focus has always been, or at least my knowledge of transportation in general has always kind of been focused on the micro changes, right? The distance between lane markings in order to influence a driver's speed and through perception, right? Or messaging on road signs or anything like that, right? The oncoming traffic risk reward with passing a car, So that's the kind of experience that I have with transportation, and it's never been one of those things where I've looked at it kind of this macro level. So this big meta analysis of the speed and transportation method trade-off here has been a really great article. And I mean, like, I remember a couple weeks ago when I was picking this out for office hours, I looked at this and said, wow, this is a great story, and didn't think much of it. And then our patrons chose it, and I was like, wow, okay, yeah, now we actually have to read it and get through it. And it's insanely interesting. And I don't know if it's just because I have a soft spot for transportation, but this article is awesome. So I think what we should start with here, Blake, is kind of the key findings, right? Like let's just get them out of the way at the top here. Maybe I'll read one, you read one, and if we have anything to say about them, we can talk about it that way.
Sure.
It looks like there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks like there's 10 key findings for this. So we're gonna go through them. So the first finding here is that transportation planning often involves trade-offs between speed and other goals. And it's important to consider all speed-related impacts in the planning process. You mentioned the impacts. I don't know how much more we have to say about this. This is kind of the whole, it's like the top level finding, right?
It's kind of like the thesis statement of the whole thing, really, is like, take this stuff into account when we're doing a larger planning or macro analysis. So our second key finding here is for some trips, such as urgent errands, like we've all been on, faster travel can provide large benefits, but higher speeds are inherently costly. So faster modes require much more expensive vehicles and infrastructure, more space and energy, and impose greater health risks and environmental damages, something I don't often think about when I think about traveling quickly, and often by an order of a large magnitude. So all of these things kind of compound together. But because higher speed travel tends to increase with wealth, speed prioritization planning tends to be inequitable. It increases costs that affluent travelers impose on disadvantaged groups. Now, talk about a very meta impact that is not, I don't think, in the zeitgeist self-evident. That's definitely something that's never even crossed my mind, is that with more wealth, you tend to acquire, like in correlation wise, faster vehicles, and so ultimately that ends up impacting disadvantaged groups or people that don't have cars. That's incredible.
Really, dude? Private jets? That didn't occur to you?
Yeah, so I guess I'm thinking about like just cars and thinking how slow my car drives, and then I don't really know. It's interesting. I didn't even think of jets. Like, so a Learjet, that would have a lot of impact.
Yeah. And this is an interesting point for a lot of reasons, right? And I think it talks about a lot of different sort of costs here. The space and energy required to run these things, right? And this is something I think we talked about briefly before the show, but I didn't actually consider the space of infrastructure required for faster vehicles. And it might seem obvious to some, but right, like big parking lots is a thing that you need to store all these vehicles, or that's kind of the obvious one. The less obvious one, at least to me, was that there are certain requirements for distances between vehicles on like a freeway. And so the faster the speed limit, the more distance between cars you need to have. And so the more lanes you need to have to accommodate that type of road, right? Which is why there are speed limits on the roads. That's to get at how much space for the flow of traffic that there needs to be between you and the car ahead of you. It's kind of insane. I didn't think about that. There's like just in terms of the distribution of wealth, right? I mean, it's a lot cheaper to take a bus or to walk than it is to own a vehicle, own the insurance for that vehicle, pay for gas for that vehicle. And so, it does incur all these additional sort of that's what I'm looking for. It's inequitable, right? You have those with more money are able to afford those things, where those with less are unable to afford those and are almost forced to take some sort of the public transportation. I want any other closing thoughts on point 2? I want to get into point 3 here.
Head on into point 3.
So point 3 here, planners often assume that faster travel provides time savings but people tend to maintain fixed travel time budgets. They devote about the same number of daily minutes to personal travel, regardless of speed. So as a result, faster travel increases travel distances rather than saving time. This causes mobility inflation. It ratchets up the amount of travel people require to meet their needs, which is costly to communities and unfair to people with limited mobility. So I want to break this point down because that's a lot of words. And basically what it's saying is that as more and more people get access to these faster vehicles, we own a car. And so it's not inconvenient for us to drive 15 miles down the way to go to the grocery store. That is hugely inconvenient for people that rely on walking or public transportation, because then they have to figure out what the schedule is. They're on that schedule, and it's quite a distance. And so when you're thinking about time budgets for travel, right, it may take you 5 minutes to drive that 15 miles because you just hop in your car, go down the freeway, and you're there door to door, 5 minutes. Where somebody else might take them an hour to get there because they're dependent on public transportation. And so we're talking about these travel time budgets for people. And we think about what this is point here is saying is that we think about things in terms of travel time budgets and not necessarily distance or time it takes to get something. This is the daily minutes of personal travel, and that's regardless of speed, right? So here in California, great example. When you say, how far is something away? We often reply with, it depends on the time of day because of traffic. And that builds into our estimation of how long it's going to take us to get to somewhere, right? 5 miles could take 5 minutes, or it could take an hour, depending on which street you're on here in Southern California. And so
110%, yeah.
So we tend to, the whole point here is that we look at those travel time budgets rather than distance or speed. We're looking at the destination. We're looking at those types of things and budget according to that, not necessarily the mode of travel. Any points on that, Blake?
That is very interesting to me because I feel like one thing I've really started taking advantage of is walking to places that I can just because of where I live. But it's not really something that I think about as my personal travel time. Like I know it only probably takes 10 minutes to walk to the grocery store and then, 10 minutes back. But it's not something that I guess I budget for all the time. And it'd be interesting, like, because at some point I'm going to have to move or change apartments if we want to buy a house or whatever. And so that change in my personal anchored time cost is going to be much different now that I can't like walk to the grocery store and I'll have to drive. So it's cool to think about this in a much more scientific way is the best way I can think to put it than like normally I'm thinking about time or distance savings.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? And I think that's a great point that they make in this article about the time budget rather than the speed budget. So why don't we get into point 4 here?
All right. So contrary to common assumptions, higher speeds do not necessarily support economic development. See, this is another connection that I find fascinating. So faster travel can increase productivity if it increases overall accessibility, but those benefits are generally offset by the additional costs of increased vehicle travel and sprawl. So again, like another connection that I would not necessarily draw because I think for me, I do associate living closer to work and being able to drive there and get there quickly as a productivity or efficiency increaser. However, I guess like overall, maybe that's not actually the case. And it could even have economic impacts depending on how it impacts other people. If they're able to live close enough to work, if they're able to take transportation that's their own versus walking or taking public transport. So the impact here is kind of intense because it's not something I think about in terms of the macro level or the overall impact of, taking the highway to work.
Yeah. I mean, coming from my experience, like I used to drive upwards of like 4 hours a day
to and driving.
from, to get there and back for work. And It's kind of interesting that this was done during the pandemic. Like, how are things going to change now that like people are working from home more and not commuting? And is that going to impact our travel budgets? Right? Like for me, I was very drained after a 2-hour drive home. Right, and so when it was asking me to do anything after work, it was like, no thank you, I'm good, I'm just going to stay home, my budget is expended. But now I'm at home all the time working here, and it's like, yeah, I want to get out and I want to do things, and I have all that time in my budget that I didn't have before for travel. And is there any way I can take public transportation? I don't know. I see it as it's one of those things where like, yeah, there's a lot of costs, but I'm a parent and I can't. It's like taking a toddler on public transportation is a huge thing. And like, maybe if we lived in a community where that's possible, like we do walk to, some of the businesses close by, when we take the stroller, but it's like to do that, the further you get, the harder it becomes, right? The more moving pieces you have. Yeah, interesting point. I think we skipped one. I'm going to go back here. So current planning practices tend to exaggerate. So I guess this is technically point 4. Blake read point 5, but we'll just call this point 5. Current planning practices tend to exaggerate the benefits, underestimate the costs, and ignore inequities of faster travel. Current planning generally recognizes trade-offs between speed and safety, but overlooks the other impacts such as reduced affordability, public health, and mobility for non-drivers. This results in an overinvest in faster modes and higher roadway design speeds, which over the long run increases total vehicle travel and sprawl. So what we're talking about here is because of this misunderstanding in planning activities, they are not taking into consideration some of the things they should be in terms of smart design of a like community layout, right? You work right next to where you reside, and there's also a grocery store there and everything you need, and so you don't really need to travel that far, right? This is kind of that smart city approach where everything's kind of close by and you don't really need to take transit. But that gets harder the further away from the city you are, right? The further away you are from these highly dense population areas. But what we're talking about here is this misunderstanding in focus during these planning activities. It basically it means that they're going to design the roadways to be higher speeds, which means you get to someplace further away faster, but that increases sprawl, which makes it less likely for somebody to be able to use those public transportation pieces to get somewhere or to walk, right? So that's kind of the point. Anything to follow up with that one?
That one's really tough to think about because you have to then almost make a pretty big trade-off in terms of where you decide to live. Like, do you live close to where your job is? Or do you like live in a community that makes you, able to walk to places or kind of have, public transit a little bit more accessible for things you want to do with your family or your partner or whatever it may be. And it's interesting that it's the world's, or at least here in California, I mean, I don't know what it's like everywhere. It doesn't feel like it's really set up to, unless you're working like downtown and living downtown, you're really not able to kind of have all of that stuff easily accessible without having a car or without having a mode of transportation that is beyond, walking or biking. So it would be cool if like more and more, I don't know if more and more cities is the answer, but more and more communities being designed to support like life and work in some way, which is in a lot of ways, it's interesting because this does play into, the impact of the pandemic and more people working remotely. And It may, from my perspective, it's definitely given me the capability to, be more absorbed in the community that I live in and not being, traveling as much to go back and forth to and from work, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. It's like when you have these, I think there's going to be a massive shift, right? When you have these people able to work from home, you are eliminating that commute, that sprawl to get to work. And so I think that is helpful in a lot of situations. There's still the inequities that come with being able to afford a computer, being able to afford the space to be able to work at home. But I think we're going to see a lot more of like a compacting of the sort of of spaces, right? Because this takes care of one of those branches. Now, all that's left is to design a community where you have people living, and this could be a suburb where you have people living, and then you have a grocery store right next to it, and kind of the basic needs, and then maybe you drive further for one-off things, maybe like hardware stores down the line. You don't need one of those in every community, but a grocery store is something that people go to frequently, or like a clothing store or something like that. So designing with those in mind to where you could walk to those depending on where you live, and it could be central to a suburb, so that way everybody can get to it equidistant. And then there's this whole like planning piece of infrastructure and where people live, and how all things kind of, the smart design of how things are laid out. It's really interesting.
And I feel like the impact of, because I think an unintended impact here may be that you have people that are also kind of, they're living, because there used to be like, transportation from a manufacturing perspective was different 10 years ago than it is now. Now we have, much more Amazon kind of various vehicles out in the world, potentially impacting a bunch of different, or potentially impacting how the infrastructure in various places was originally designed. And then we've also, got like the advent of more vehicles and more travel, as well as people that do things like Lyft or Uber. So now we have more people depending on transportation means of various types and being on the road at more times that could, in a way, impact whatever model was actually put forth in the macro design that originally came up in these different cities. And I wonder how much of, if any, a lot of that is kind of considered here, is when you have emergent businesses that have these unintended consequences come into play.
Yeah, good point. You want to get into this next point here, point 6? I shrunk it, so you're going to see it as the top one.
Nice. Thank you so much. All right. So the inefficiency and inequity of speed prioritizing planning are evident if transport performance is evaluated using effective speed, defined as the travel distance divided by the time spent traveling and earning money to pay for travel expenses. Measured this way, automobile travel is often slower than bicycling or public transport, and is regressive because it benefits affluent motorists who have more time, who value time more than money, but it hurts lower income people who prefer lower cost modes. That totally makes sense, because it's even like one. This is not the best example for the lower cost problem, but think about working in Silicon Valley. It's very expensive to live there. But there's a lot of job opportunities, especially for people in human factors or UX that are interested in various types of tech. Like, it's a giant center for that. But there's like the giant cost of having to drive or take transportation to work for a lot of these companies. And you end up doing that like 2.5 hour back and forth if you want to live in a, more affordable housing or anything like that. And so there is this kind of really big issue, I think, of you have this access to a lot of great work and opportunity, but it comes at a severe cost from a kind of like transportation perspective. And I think things like having more public transit, which to San Francisco's benefit, it has more access from my perspective. But having more modes of that kind of stuff with more affordable kind of options around the board. I mean, I don't even know how to tackle that issue.
Yeah, it's insane, because like a lot of the cities built right now are not equipped for large structural changes in infrastructure. So the best they can do is like throw an extra bus route in there, maybe, or and I don't like yanking the chain too much here, but like this is why novel ideas like the Hyperloop, or even these underground tunnels that Elon Musk is talking about. That's why those are so sort of interesting, is because they're sort of these solutions that could benefit these cities that are already out there, right? You think about a big city like Los Angeles, you put tunnels underneath, and now you've opened it up to a whole different dimension. You are literally going not just X, Y, but now you're going Z down below to get from point A to point B, at least for longer distances, and that might help. And you can keep digging down as far as you'd like. So, things like that are interesting when you think about patching some of these issues, especially with these cities that are not built for this infrastructure already. I'm not saying it's a good idea to put tunnels down below, but, thinking of these out of the box ideas, can you have like Uber drones that also take advantage of the Z plane, but now they're above, navigating through the city and get you to a certain landing spot, a little closer to where you're going? And how do you make that affordable? Right. I think tunnels are probably a little bit more affordable than a drone flying across the city.
Yeah.
But, I think over time, maybe that then makes the other things a little bit more accessible. If upper middle class can afford the Uber drone, then does that then open up better infrastructure to utilize the infrastructure that is already built for others? I don't know. And it'll be interesting to see.
I mean, the tunnel thing is interesting, right? Because if like maybe that's a way to, it's the wrong turn of phrase, but the only way I can think of, like, clean up the streets themselves. So making it so basically if you own your own vehicle, like, great, use the tunnel system and free up more space for public transport so we could add, more bus routes or more options in that realm, or more kind of that like free of that ride sharing concept that can take advantage of the infrastructure that exists, but also providing benefit to various types of different income situations, but then still allowing anybody who owns a vehicle and all that kind of stuff to still take advantage of the tunnel system. There's a lot to figure out there, but I think you're right. Thinking outside of the box and trying to take different solutions in is ultimately really what's going to allow for a restructuring of any kind of planned infrastructure for transportation. It's not like we can just, halt everything in a city for a couple of years and we'll reconfigure it and then everybody will be fine.
Or or do you, like, as buildings become available or are constructed, do you start making them to where you have a grocery store on the bottom floor? And apartment buildings above that, and so like that then becomes a grocery store for the entire apartment building. That could be something that helps, right? And I know that's in some places, but not everywhere. And if you start thinking about things that way, providing the basic needs to everybody, to where they just take an elevator down and boom, they're there. I don't know.
Lots of value.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to get into point 7 here. So this is faster travel is not bad, but it is costly. For efficiency and equity's sake, planning should favor slower, affordable, and resource-efficient modes over faster, costly modes, and traffic speeds should be set to optimize community livability. So this is kind of combining a couple of the points that we've already talked about. It's sort of the cost associated with these faster speeds, the inequity that's associated also with these faster speeds. So making sure that these speed limits make sure that, we're taking advantage of not encouraging sprawl, but rather, sort of compacting the community and making it a little bit more walkable, a little bit more bikeable, able to get to point A to point B with some of this transportation. That's a pretty simple point. I don't know how much more we can elaborate on that, so I'm going to pass it back over to you, Blake.
One bit about that I do want to say is that it definitely makes me appreciate and look at speed limit signs and traffic limit signs differently, because usually it's just like, okay, that's a number, but there is some way that it's put together that supposedly should optimize how you're able to get from point A to point B, but also change how a community is structured. All right.
Really quick here,
right.
I'm going to jump in with a comment from Kristen. With the tunnel comment, using tunnels for non-automated vehicles and freeing up the freeways for fully automated vehicles, that could be one solution. I would think it's the opposite, right? You build the tunnels for fully automated vehicles because then they can all be set for a certain parameter. You can turn them into their own vehicles that optimize the space within the tunnels. and you don't have to worry about, well, what happens if a tunnel gets congested below. You still leave that infrastructure up above because you have all that access, but the tunnels might be, for longer distances or something like that. I don't know. I don't have the answers. That's just my thought. But it's interesting to think about, how do we optimize the spaces, right? We can't use the Z space above us for, non-automated vehicles right now because cars don't fly. Although there is a news story this week that was very cool. You should go check that out. But where do you put things? And do you put buses below in the tunnels to help them get from point A to point B better and make public transportation more reliable? It's a question. So I don't know. Why don't we get into this next point here? Point, I guess, what, 8, 9, 8?
8.5. All right. So to their credit, many policymakers and planning practitioners support slower modes and traffic speed reductions more than their economic models justify. They realize intuitively that slower modes play important roles in an efficient and equitable transportation system, and so deserve public support. However, this occurs despite rather than supported by standard analysis practices. Reforming these practices can justify more support for slower modes of transportation. Interesting. So it sounds like that there needs to be a change or a reconfiguration of what's going on from the analysis perspective to make it probably more clear and more self-evident that there is like a trade-off we're making by allowing faster speeds, not just for like travel time and sprawl, but there's economic impacts. And so although people realize this from the policy perspective, because it's not, I would assume in the zeitgeist or as popular of a known topic, that without kind of better analysis or better meta-analyses like this paper or this kind of like large report, it's kind of hard to make that case as evident to, all of the policymakers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we need to shift the paradigm to rather becoming a preferred thing, because it's saying this occurs despite rather than supported by, right? So I think it needs to become the standard to favor these things and to reformat the process, right? And that's what they're saying here with this point.
And I'm wondering if, like, your point earlier about that it's not straightforward to make these restructures or to make a lot of these changes wholesale to create communities that support this stuff. So that could be why, although we understand that there's issues, it's not like generally supported. Just a lot of cost.
So my call to action for this episode is, if you're listening to this and want to get involved in your local government, you can bring them this article and get involved with the transportation, division of your local department and set speed limits for places and be like, look, we need lower speed limits for this reason. All right, I'll get into point 9 here. So this is a more comprehensive speed analysis is likely to result in less investment in urban highways, more investments into active and public transport modes, lower roadway design speeds, more planning to improve travel comfort and convenience rather than speed. So that's good. I like that, right? If they're basically if you spend more time on this analysis, your basically investment shifts from making things more efficient to more comfortable and convenient for the end user, which in this case is people traveling from point A to point B, at least in public transportation, right? So, and that even goes for walking too. If you plan a city from the top down and look at, say, oh, somebody can walk from this place to this place, and that's great, then it will have a lasting impact as well. Any other follow-ups to this one? There's one more point left.
I really like the point about improving the travel comfort of the existing, transportation options. Because imagine if you did have a farther commute, but you had a slower option that allowed you to maybe, do something outside of just drive the car or like sit in an Uber or whatever it is. Like if you're able to get some work done or, do something that's like a hobby or that you're interested in, like reading or whatever, it could really, I don't know, change how people kind of perceive these different modes of travel. And it could change how employers see the different modes of travel in terms of you can still be efficient and get your work done by taking, a train to work. But anyway, all right, last point up. So, of course, every traveler has unique needs and preferences, and many choose faster modes, such as automobiles, despite their higher costs for the sake of convenience or status. However, current demographic and economic trends, such as aging population, increasing urbanization, plus growing affordability, health and environmental concerns, are increasing demand for slower modes in livable neighborhoods. Given better options, many people would choose slower travel modes and homes, more compact multimodal neighborhoods that provide more accessibility with less mobility. Everybody benefits if our planning practices respond to these demands. And this is really like, I honestly, we said that first bullet was the thesis of the article, but I really feel like this kind of drives everything we've talked about home. There's a lot of different kind of multivariate factors going on here that are impacting it for the sake of transportation. That's really the main thing that's focused on here, but the potential benefits of changing basically the existing infrastructure and thinking about this in a macro way could have, potential benefits to not just, how long you're spending in a car or how much it's costing, but just larger implications like environmental concerns or just making your life a little bit more enjoyable because you have a much tighter knit community.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a great end cap point for this entire article. And I think we did a good job of covering a lot of the concepts. I don't know if we need to go through those. I think one interesting point that I do want to bring up here is people might say in surveys that they would prefer slower travel, but like at least here in California, speeding is the norm, right? We get frustrated at cars going below the speed limit or going faster than the flow of traffic. And so what can we do to sort of make this slower transport, like bicycles or public transportation, walking, more attractive to people, right? And that's another sort of interesting point that I don't know if this article necessarily touched on so much. It kind of highlighted the differences between the modes, but how do we sort of push a message to encourage people, pro-social messages to encourage people to utilize those other ways of transportation, right? Like for me, public transit isn't even in the equation. Like I don't even think about a bus when I think about going to somewhere. I might think about it if I'm on travel in a new place. I might think about it if I am going a long distance, like maybe, to a different state or something, or take a Greyhound or take a train or something like that. But I don't think about it locally. And so how do we, what can we do locally? I think is a bigger question.
Yeah, and I think that going back to almost taking some of the planning aspects or funding and putting it more back into the community for public transit may help, because making things more comfortable and more attractive and have more utility for local folks could have a lot of impact. But I don't know. It really depends, because I think a lot of the stuff that's being mentioned in this article is not just that people like to drive faster, but there's also some kind of like status marker that's coming with owning a vehicle, owning a fast vehicle that has like it's afforded to people who have a certain lifestyle, but it does trickle down and have impacts on potentially everybody else. The one thing that is just jumping out at me is I wonder if these meta-analyses get more and more public and people really do, from a policymaker standpoint, try to see the benefits of slower means of transportation or slower modes, that if we start seeing newer communities that are start to develop in a way where it's got a lot more things locally accessible to them, or if, as we're seeing like the tech boom expand outside of Silicon Valley, if places like Colorado or Texas kind of start forming their communities around some of these larger corporations, if like that can be a push to start making communities a little bit more accessible in terms of modes of transportation or any of that stuff.
Yeah. Great points. And I don't really have much else on this article. I will say, Blake, that I was a little worried that we were going to be. I was worried that we weren't going to have enough to talk about, but we're like 40 minutes into this podcast.
There we go, and the magic happens.
Do you have any other closing thoughts on this amazing article?
just thanks to the Patreons for picking it. This is something I think we don't touch on enough, and it is like a very seminal human factors topic or industry when we think about transportation. And like Nick said, thinking about this in the macro level is fun because it's really kind of stretching my mind to really think more systems of system style than like the micro behavior stuff that I'm used to.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you to our patrons this week for selecting our topic. And thank you to our friends over at Victoria Transport Policy Institute for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, join me for office hours on Tuesdays where I find these news stories. And we do post the links to the original articles on our weekly roundups and our blog. You can also join us on our Slack or Discord for more discussion on these stories. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, like I said, huge thank you, as always, to our patrons, and especially our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patron, Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you keep the show running, literally keep our lights on over here. This is what Patreon looks like without you. So I'm just, for those on video, saw my light go off. Thank you so much for your continued support. And if you want to become a patron, we are always updating our rewards over there, always putting out fun things for our patrons. Want to make sure that you are taken care of. Patreon is our priority. Want to make sure that the people who support the show financially are getting their money's worth. And so at the very least, go check it out. See if it's right for you. If not, you can help support the show in other ways, and we'll get to those at the end of the show. But here's a little fun fact for you. If we have 2 more patrons at the HFE level, the Human Factors Engineer level, that would allow us to upgrade to get some artificial intelligence going on with some of our transcripts and make our shows a little bit more accessible to those who are hearing impaired. So if you are considering supporting us, that is a one reason that you might want to do that. To help our transcripts, help those who are hearing impaired. All right, let's go ahead and get into this next part of the show. We're going to switch gears.
It came from. It came from.
Yes, it came from. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that you, the community, the human factors community, the user experience community, the design community, the psychology community, any community, as long as it's human factors tangential, is talking about. So we got 2 tonight. I think we're going to go ahead and get into this first one. I really like this question. This one is thoughts on working at a design or human factors agency versus a product-based or in-house company. And this is from Gupta98 on the user experience subreddit. They go on to write, would you rather work for companies like IDEO, which are mainly agencies which are mainly agencies, or companies like Netflix, Apple, or Spotify? Can you please list some pros and cons of each? Or are you, or if you are working at any, how do you like it? Blake, have you worked for an agency? Have you worked for a tech company like this? And what's kind of the difference?
Yeah, so I haven't worked specifically for one of these kind of like FANG companies or anything like that, but I have had the experience of working in an agency style model and being focused on a singular product like something like Netflix or Apple. Honestly, this might not be everybody's favorite answer, but I love both. I think both have massive benefits and can teach you a lot regardless of what you're doing. So from the focal product aspect, you get immensely familiar with your user base, the product itself, and you can really optimize something through human factors work or user experience research and design work. So you have a lot of opportunity to have a high impact on like a singular product that you're focused on. I think from the agency perspective, it's nice to get a lot of variety and get a giant set of touch points. So for agency work, you could be doing anything from responsive web design to like application design to even working on physical products. So, and I think that has massive benefit, especially early in your career. If you haven't had a lot of experience with a diverse set of products, and it can really tell you like, do I want to go spend most of my career life in digital products, or do I really like to do physical product design? So I think both are provide very different experiences that allow you to kind of hone skills. But I think it's, if you can, try both of them so that you can really get a gamut of what it's like to work in both settings. But Nick, have you had experience in both these realms?
Damn it, Blake, would you say it depends?
Maybe.
I need the "it depends" button. I promise one of these days I'm going to get a Staples button. And I've worked for both, and I think I'm going to agree with you, Blake. I think it does depend. I didn't know how I was going to answer this question until I was faced with it just now. Each of them have their pros and cons, and I think we can go over those pros and cons. So I think let's start with just an in-house or product-based company, like your Netflix, like your Spotify. I think in this example, you are heavily invested in one specific product, and you are making adjustments at the micro level. Like we talked about these macro and micro adjustments in our news story tonight. And I think that was a great kind of primer for this, because I think of this as a way to improve marginally upon a product, but have a large impact. So what I'm talking about here is there's always going to be ways to improve a product. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen that graphic of like what education is like, where you have kind of the expanding circle where you have like, hey, here's your general education, here's your specialty, and then here's your PhD, and it looks like a little bump off to the side, and that bump keeps extending as you learn more in your domain. And that's kind of what I'm thinking of when it comes to this. Like, there's so much blanket user experience, blanket human factors principles that you can apply towards a product. But once you get to that point, there's going to be room for improvements, but they're marginal. But you dig deeper into that one product and make it better over time. That's why some of these products that have these in-house teams feel so polished, is because they've been working on it for a long time. They've tested different things with just this one product. Now, take the other approach where you're at an agency. You are usually on contract for something, and so you don't have the history with the product that you might have for an in-house agency, or sorry, an in-house company. If you are with one of these design agencies or design company, human factors company, you're going to be doing, like Blake said, a variety of different work, and that can also benefit you. When it comes to working and problem solving on some of these solutions, right? You might encounter a problem on one project that has a solution from another project, and having those connections of neurons in your brain that go, oh, this is a great solution from this other thing that we can apply to this, is really useful. But I also feel like that's a trap in a lot of ways, because then you are so not necessarily pressed for time, but the solutions that you make towards the solution on one thing might not necessarily benefit when you're just taking a plug and play thing from another project. I think it does largely depend, and you do get the breadth with a design or human factors agency, but you get the depth with a product or an in-house company. So if you're very passionate about a specific product, I think that could be right for you. If you are still experimenting and figuring out what is right for you, I think the design agency or human factors company is probably the right way to go. Or if you just enjoy a variety of different things and don't really want to settle, I know that's, an attractive quality for some people. And so that might be a better fit for a human factors company. That's kind of where I'm at. Anything else to add to that one, Blake?
No, that was perfect, man. Really brought it home and kind of made some specific points there.
Thanks, man. I try. All right. So this next one here, this is what do you do when you're stuck on a problem? This is by Caters on the the user experience subreddit. They go on to write, currently stuck on a problem that I can't solve properly. I'm curious to hear what's your approach when you find yourself in those situations. Do you reframe the problem in a different way? Do you have a specific set of questions that you always ask yourself, or any other systems that you follow? Really curious to know about this. Thanks. Blake, what do you do when you're stuck on a problem?
So I've learned the hard way to do this, and I think it sounds obvious, but sometimes it is not the most straightforward thing to do. Go ask for help, because you can ruminate on a problem, apply your specific framework or systems thinking to it, and you still may not be coming at it the correct way. And expertise, or just sometimes bouncing ideas off of somebody else within your team or like within the company you work for, who has a diverse set of experience outside of your own current experience, could really change how you're looking at a problem to help you figure out if you do need to reframe it. Do you need to take a step back and do more research before you actually define what the problem is? But there's a reason that even when I did contracting on my own, like as a freelancer, this is where the podcast studio was at one point, and it was a startup incubator. I would go to the developer that worked outside my office and ask him questions about something I was tackling. And him not even, being a part of, my little contracting thing that I was doing, it still was helpful to like talk through ideas and get concepts down. So in my case, when I get stuck on a problem, I've gotten to the point where I make myself ask for help, either with somebody I'm super comfortable with, like a mentor, or one of my teammates that I'm currently working with.
That's some great advice, Blake. I actually, it might even sound simpler than that, but what I do, the very first thing when I encounter a brick wall, the first thing I do is I step away, and I don't work. And I typically find that when I come back to a problem with fresh eyes, it's a little bit better. I think asking for help is a great solution. There are benefits. Like here's another, ties into our last question. Design agency, human factors company, you're working with a bunch of people who have a variety of experiences with human factors. And so they can come back to you and say, hey, here's XYZ, different solutions that you could employ for that product. But I think when you're stuck on a problem, the best thing for me to do is I step back and I say, okay, I let my team know, hey, I am stepping back for a couple hours. I've hit a wall, and here's my problem. I let them know. And I'm just stepping back. If you need me, I'm here, but I'm stepping back. And I'll step back and I'll think about it for a couple hours. I'll go do something else. I'll switch modes, which is often helpful. And what I often find myself doing is when I try to switch modes is I fixate on the thing. And I don't know if that's helpful, but sometimes fixating on the problem while you're doing something else, like playing a game or watching TV or something, and it just drives into your brain. And it's like, oh, there it is. That's at least my next steps. I try to not necessarily solve the problem, but identify what the next steps are. Do I ask for help? Do I do a competitive analysis with other things that are trying to do the same thing? Do I research X, Y, and Z to try to solve the problem? Do I need to talk to a user about the thing that I'm trying to solve? So I think about the next steps necessarily and not necessarily the solution. And I find that when I come back to work, when I sit down, I go, okay, I at least know what I need to do next, and then I do it. So that's kind of what I do when I'm stuck on a problem. I know it's easier to say step away. Not everybody can, especially if you work in an office with other people that depend on your schedule. Make yourself available. And I know it's not necessarily always easy to step away in an office environment where you're expected to work. But if you are working from home and have that flexibility, that helps. So anyway, well, why don't we, anything else to add to that one, Blake?
I do have one more tidbit for it, because you did drive a good thing home. And like a strategy that I use probably once a week, because I get hung up on development issues, is if I just really hit a wall, I can't do anything else. Because of the benefits of working from home, I will step away and do as hard of a workout as I can and sleep on the problem. And one example of that is it happened to me this week. it happened to be basically yesterday. Did the workout, went to sleep. I woke up about like 5:45 this morning and had a random idea that just came to me. So it was one of those things that, like you said, stepping away from the problem and letting it ruminate in the back of your mind, because I go to bed thinking about problems that I've had during the day and trying to solve them, and probably am still doing so subconsciously while asleep. But sometimes it just provides you a different perspective when you wake up the next day and you can try something new. So that's another strategy you can try and take.
All right. Well, why don't we get into one more thing? This needs no introduction. This is Blake and I's banter. Blake, what do you have up for your one more thing this week?
Up this week, one thing that I've really been enjoying, Nick, is, and you may have seen this in the Discord if anybody's been, hanging out in the tool section of our Discord. I've been throwing a bunch of Python resources in there because that came up actually in the lab meeting for one of the weeks for the Human Factors Cast Digital Media Lab. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's
and it's been fun. Like, Python is it's interesting because it's different from JavaScript for me. One thing that has come up for me is that finally now, after all these kind of years of playing in web development, I feel much more confident in JavaScript than I ever have. So I can pick up other languages a little bit easier, and it's not as daunting to tackle. And one thing that I really enjoy about Python is it's meant for data analysis. So it's letting me dive into machine learning concepts a little bit deeper than I would have before. And it's a great companion for some of these Google courses that I'm taking on machine learning. So I don't know. It's just been fun. If anybody's interested in Python, we do have a couple resources from Free Code Camp in our tools section of our Discord. But yeah, that's kind of it.
Blake, you let me know when we can use machine learning to produce these episodes when we're gone. For the articles. So we just set up automation. Patrons choose it. It uses deepfakes to mask our voices and our faces, and it uses machine learning based on the article that we talk about on the week. You feed that in as the input, and then the output is us talking about. Let me know.
Coming soon.
My one more thing this week is moving sucks, and moving sucks really bad. And moving sucks especially bad when you have a small human that you must take care of at the same time. Because there are certain rooms that are off limits at certain times of the day. So nap time, the room is off limits. Sleep time, the room is off limits. And so trying to figure out how to optimize packing everything that you own into these boxes and putting them in places where the small human can't get to or open up or take things out of is a real challenge. And it really sucks, and I want to do it again. And so
oh man, at least like the move is coming soon.
It's coming. Yeah, I mean, like we're pretty close, which is why summer hiatus, everyone. But like it sucks really bad, and I don't want to do it. Anyway, that's that. I just, it sucks, and I feel for anyone who's got to move. And all the logistics behind everything, finding hotels rooms at the appropriate distances along the way, getting from point A to point B, worrying about all the, movers and U-Haul and movers and check out and check in. And anyway, all that. Well, you know what, everybody, that's going to be it for today, everyone. Let us know what you guys think of the news story this week. If you want, you can hang out with us on our Slack or Discord, or get to us on any of our social channels. You can visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest in Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. One, you can leave us a 5-star review on wherever you're at right now. There's likely a little button that says review this show. Do that. Tell your friends about us. That's the second way you can do it. The best way we can grow is if you tell your colleagues about us, especially if you're at a Human Factors firm. Check that out. And 3, consider supporting us on Patreon. Like I said, if you're able to, go check us out. And we're going to be off for 2 weeks here. If you want to fill that void, we have, I think, something like 70-something Human Factors minutes up there. Anyway, go check that out if you can. As always, links to all of our socials and our website is going to be in the description of this episode. Mr. Blake Arnsdorff, where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about infrastructure and transportation?
Absolutely. Y'all come and find me in the Discord. You can just at Blake me in there at any time. But across social media, you can also find me at Don't Panic UX.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me streaming on Twitch Tuesdays at 1 Pacific for office hours and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time.
It depends.
It depends. All right. I am done recording. Are you done recording?
I have stopped recording.
Excellent. So I think no post show, right? You got to take care of Doggo?
Yeah, I got to take care of Doggo. But I do want to become famous, so I might have to just hang out.
Hold on. Oh, wait. I blocked it from the chat, so I can't. I can't see it. Yeah. Anyway, we got some spam bots on Twitch. If you've been hanging out with us, thank you so much. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you hanging out with us live. We know a lot of our folks listen after the show or after we've recorded the show, but seriously, having somebody to bounce off of when it's live is awesome. So seriously, thank you. Thank you to everyone. I just feel so appreciative for anyone who spends the time to listen to the show on a weekly basis. I like, the patrons, they give us their money and that helps the show. But honestly, it's everyone, it's the listeners. And I can't get over it sometimes that people want to listen to you and I, Blake, talk about human factor stuff every week. It's kind of insane to me. And just the reception that we get on some of these social platforms is really kind of, it's special. And I truly appreciate it.
It's very cool. It's definitely mind blowing, right? Because this started in a garage.
It did. It literally started in a garage in 2016, and with bad equipment. And I still need to go back and update that first episode that says, "Hey, if you're listening to this a little bit later, why don't you skip forward to that first episode?" that latest episode. Few episodes. We've changed quite a bit. Although I think most people understand that the latest episode is probably a better indicator of quality than the first episode.
Yep.
Anyway,
the archives.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We're going to get out of here. Show's going to be up shortly. I think we usually post things around 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Pacific Friday morning. But, if you're catching this on a rewatch, then it should maybe be up. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. We'll be back in 2 weeks. 3 weeks. 29th. We'll be back on the 29th. And it'll be a good show. Hopefully, do you want a preview of what we could possibly talk on the 29th, Blake? I know you got to go here, but I do want to.
Yeah, I got to sit here and export anyway. So
okay,
go ahead. I got at least 2 to 5 minutes.
Excellent. Let me just pull this up really quick. So coming up, on the 29th episode, there's a couple different news stories here. 4-day work week is an overwhelming success in Iceland. So we could be talking about the
I'm moving to Iceland. That's
4-day work week. We could talk about what went so wrong with COVID in India. So all that stuff.
Wow.
We could, we won't talk to an expert, but there is an interview with an expert on search and rescue robots, explaining the technologies used in the disasters, like the Florida condo collapse. So how they do the search and rescue stuff for that.
That would be super cool. Wow.
That would be super cool. We could continue with the theme of transportation and talk about Aircar and their prototype completing its first intercity flight.
Was that the one you were talking about before the show? Yeah,
it's
dude,
so
that
cool.
Would be. That might have
Did
to
you see
turn
that
into
video?
A short or something. No, I haven't seen it.
Dude, it's neat. We also have a couple ones from weeks prior here. Researchers using AI to track cognitive deviation in aging brains. So this one's kind of cool, right? As people get older, there's kind of like, if you're following Loki, there's a singular timeline, right? And as that deviation occurs, there's AI that monitors that and will help intervene with some of these aging brains that may need some help. And then there's navigating a virtual world as helping older adults' memory. So that's interesting from a VR perspective. We got a little bit of potpourri in there. I think that's a little bit of everything.
I really like the aging one with AI. That's pretty intense.
You know what I'm going to do, Blake? On our Patreon, I'm going to put Blake's pick next to that one. And I'm going to put Nick's pick
down
next to the Aircar. Right? I'm just curious. This is an interesting test because it'll be like a couple weeks of like a pilot test. I wonder if we should do this, like this preview in the post show, and
Why not? I mean, it's a way to like provide fun content for both of us in the post show.
I don't know if this is like stacking the votes though. Like, is letting them know what our preference is a way to manipulate the votes? I don't know.
I
don't
doubt
think
it
so.
because if it doesn't, because I think you and I have diverse interests as well as the rest of the people that support us on Patreon. So like they maybe don't want to hear about AI every week, whereas Blake wants to
Right.
hear about AI every week.
I don't want to hear about VR every week, but here I am.
They don't want that. So I think sometimes if the story is interesting enough, it might sway it. But I think most times people are just like, you know, there's enough confluence around some of the stories, and we usually have like almost a tie. So
yeah, it feels like every week there's a tie, even though we've taken some measures to make sure that the ties don't occur. 212. That. All right, man. Well, let's get out of here. I know you got to take care of Doggo. It's been a pleasure podcasting with you this evening, Blake.
Absolutely.
I won't see you through this medium until I've moved. And at some point, I should probably give you some stickers because there's somebody who needs a sticker.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you totally should, because I will see said person at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I got a whole box of them somewhere. Yeah, they're right here. Hang on. Look at how many stickers. I'm gonna bring some of these to the conferences that we plan on going to. But like, look at this. There's so many stickers in there.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's like a serious amount of stickers. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Good luck with the move. Be safe. All that kind of good stuff. And I will see you literally in the new place. That's so nuts.
Yeah, man. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better setup for this type of thing. All right, everybody. Thank you. And we will see you back here on the 29th of this month. Enjoy your summer hiatus, Blake.
You too, Nick.